Y'all, making bread is one of my favorite things to do, and I do like making old-fashioned sandwich bread, but it's also fun to make bread from other countries and other cultures. And this Turkish flatbread is so easy and it's so delicious. I just had to share it with y'all. It's sort of like a cross between a focaccia and a pita bread. So it's very easy to make. It doesn't take that long, but you'll need about 2.5 hours or so. So you probably don't want to do it on a work day, but maybe like on your day off or something like that. It freezes well, so you could like double or triple the recipe and make several and keep them in the freezer, okay? So easy. You're going to need flour. You're going to need black sesame seeds or regular sesame seeds, toasted sesame seeds, or just leave the sesame seeds off and put, sprinkle with a little flake salt or herb that you like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. This is just for garnish, basically. Warm water, egg, sugar, kosher salt, yeast, and this is instant yeast, the kind that you mix everything in at once. You don't need to proof it. And olive oil, and that's it. That all comes together and it makes this delicious, fluffy, amazing bread. The first thing you're going to do is dump your bread flour into your bowl. And this is 2 cups of bread flour. If you don't have bread flour, you can use all-purpose flour. It really needs extra gluten, so if you use all-purpose flour and you happen to have some gluten flour on hand, substitute 2 tablespoons of gluten flour for 2 tablespoons of the all-purpose flour if you're using all-purpose flour. If you don't have gluten flour, just go ahead and make it anyway. It'll still be good, just not quite as chewy and delicious as if you used bread flour. We're going to add in the yeast, the salt, the sugar, and you need sugar. Somebody's going to say, well, do I have to put sugar in it? The sugar helps activate the yeast and get it to rise, so I do suggest at least a little bit of sugar. This is not a sweet bread. The yeast eats the sugar, so just go ahead and add it. It's not going to add that many calories or that many carbs to your bread already. Flour, sugar, yeast, and salt. Yep, I caused myself to lose track of what I was doing by going off on a tangent, but that's all you need to start with. We're just going to mix that up. I have 5 ounces of water, which is about 3/4 of a cup plus 4 teaspoons. If you don't have a scale, then go ahead and measure it by 3/4 of a cup plus 4 teaspoons. But a little kitchen scale like this one is invaluable, and it doesn't cost that much, and I'll link to it below. I think I got this for like $25 on Amazon, and we've had it forever. Now remember, when we're working with yeast, we want to use warm water, but not too hot water. So I had this water pretty hot so it wouldn't cool down too much. I want to make sure that it's between 110 and 115 degrees, and this is measuring out at 110.5, so we're right there. And all I'm going to do is add the water all at once. Get my spoon out of the way. I'm just going to add the water and then set to mixing it. And you just want to mix that until it all comes together. Now, this is supposed to be a very wet and sticky dough, and it has been very dry here. And this is the thing about bread baking that messes most people up. It's not rocket science. Sometimes you're going to put your 5 ounces of water in and it is going to be very wet and sticky. And sometimes you're going to put your 5 ounces of water in, like here, and it's not going to be quite right. It still sticks together, but it's too heavy of a dough. So I'm going to get a little more warm water, and I'll be right back. I'm going to add water a little bit at a time and stir between each add. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon at a time. And I'm going to stir it until it has the right consistency. So that's about a tablespoon. And we're just going to stir that up and see how it's coming together better than it was. And it is a very wet, very sticky dough. So we only needed that 1 extra tablespoon, but it made all the difference. Don't be afraid to add a little more flour or a little more water if you need to in a bread recipe, because sometimes it just needs it. Bread dough, it takes on moisture from the air, so if you're making bread on a very humid day, you may need extra flour. Or if you're making bread on a very dry day, like I am here in Texas today, you may need a little more water. So that's part of bread baking. That's the part that you only get with experience. And so when you're making a recipe, before you decide it doesn't work, make it 2 or 3 times and just adjust it so that it works for you, okay? So now we've got that in there, and what we're gonna do is get the sticky dough off of a spoon. I'm just gonna cover this with plastic wrap, and I'm gonna put it in my proofing up. My oven has a proofing setting. If yours doesn't, you just wanna put it in a warm place, and you're gonna let it rise until it's double. And that's gonna take about an hour, could take up to an hour and a half, depending on how cool your kitchen is. So let's get this covered. My bowl is too big for the plastic wrap, so it's gonna take 2. And then I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna let this rise for about an hour or until it's doubled in bulk, and then I'll be back. Okay, the dough has just about risen to double, and I'm gonna go ahead and make my egg glaze before we go any further. And all you need for that is a tablespoon of water and an egg. Sometimes you'll use an egg white only, sometimes you'll use an egg yolk only, but this time we're gonna use the whole egg. An egg white will give you a crispy crust. An egg yolk will give you a softer, more golden, tender crust, and a whole egg will just be kind of in between the two. But what we're using it for is to help the sesame seeds to stick. So I'm just going to crack this egg into my tablespoonful of water. The egg is room temperature, and I'm just going to mix that up until it's really well mixed, and then I'm going to set it aside. Now, so funny thing happened. When I was putting the stuff away from the first segment, I realized that I had used all-purpose flour instead of bread flour in the bread. So I went ahead and mixed some of the dough up with bread flour, and that way we'll be able to compare the two and you can see if there's differences or not. So I just decided to make my mistake into a teaching moment. And actually, I'm pretty happy about that because it'll give us a good idea of what the differences are if you use just plain all-purpose flour, if you use bread flour. So this is our plain all-purpose flour, and as you can see, it rose really nicely. It's bubbly and it smells very yeasty. And here's our bread flour. And it's in a smaller bowl, so it may look like it rose higher, but it didn't. And it basically looks the same. It's got a nice yeasty smell to it. Both of them, if you compare the two, both of them look about the same. This one may be a little bit wetter than this one, but that would be the only difference. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna spread some flour on your work surface. Do not use too much, but you want enough to keep it from sticking, and this is a very sticky dough. And we'll do the all-purpose flour first, and I'm just going to help that out of the bowl and put my hands in the flour a little bit so it doesn't stick to me too badly. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this into an oval or a flat circle, whatever. Whatever you prefer. And you don't want to press out too many of the air bubbles. You want this to be kind of a bubbly dough. So don't roll it with your rolling pin, just pat it out gently. And we're going to take our olive oil and put it on the baking sheet. And then I'm going to get another 2 tablespoons of olive oil for the other loaf. So I'm going to put that on the baking sheet, nice and oiled. And then I'm going to hopefully and gently pick this up. If your baking sheet is big enough, it's probably not a bad idea to oil it and then put the dough on it straight from the bowl, because you're going to have to reform it anyway. Okay, and then we're going to take that, and guess what we're going to do? Yep, we're going to put plastic wrap over it and put it back in the proofing oven for about 45 minutes. So there's that one. I'm going to do the other one right in this heavy cast iron skillet. I just want to see what happens. I haven't done one in a cast iron skillet before. I'm going to put in my 2 tablespoons of oil. I haven't done one in a cast iron skillet before, and I think it's going to give it a nicer crust, but we'll see when we're done. Okay, I have my oil in there, and then I'm just going to put this straight in there this time and not worry about forming it first. We're going to pat that right out just like we did with the other one. Now, one of the things that I am noticing with the bread flour is that it's got a little more elasticity in it than the other one did, which makes sense because it's got more gluten, and that's what helps bread have that great texture. Okay, there's that one, and I'm going to cover this up, put it in the proofing oven with the other one for 45 minutes, and then I'll be back. Okay, y'all, our bread is risen really well. It's kind of lost its oval shape a little bit, but I think that's going to be okay. And I am preheating the oven to 450 degrees right now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come in about 1 inch from the edge, and if you know me at all, which some of y'all do, I have no measuring abilities at all. So it may be more than 1 inch, it may be less than 1 inch, but that's what we're going for. So you're going to make it indentations in the dough. And you can see how light and bubbly and fluffy this bread is. I mean, I think you can see. It's just so light. So many bubbles in it. You might need to put some flour on your fingers to because it is still a little bit sticky. Okay, now we've got our indentions all the way around, and we're going to take a butter knife and make diagonal lines. And again, this may be something you want to dip your butter knife in some flour so that it doesn't stick. That's what I'm going to do, so it doesn't stick too bad. I'm just going to do like that. Press down. Press down. Whew. And try not to pop the bubbles while you're doing it, okay? You want that bubbly, light, fluffiness to the bread. And then you're going to do diagonals the other way. So, is this right? Y'all, I am not good at this. If I'm going this way, then I can go this way. And what you're creating is pockets of diamond-shaped, bubbly dough. And try to make them even, but don't be too much of a perfectionist about it. Okay, and once that's done, we're going to just very lightly brush with the egg wash. And I mean lightly, because you don't want to collapse this bread. And you want to work quickly because you also don't want this egg to be to dry at all. Okay, and then we're just going to sprinkle with the sesame seeds in the center, not on the edges, which I've already got some on the edges, but you know, you get what I'm saying. Try not to be messy. I'll be cleaner on the other one. How about that? Okay? And I'm going to set this one aside, and then I'm going to work on the other one. Now remember, this one is the one with all-purpose flour. This one is the one with the bread flour. And it rose nice and lightly, and I probably should have sprayed the inside of that plastic wrap with no-stick spray, so it wouldn't have done that, but that's okay. And then we're going to do the same thing here. And this dough is a little bit lighter than the other one was, a little bit fluffier. So I'd say definitely, if possible, do it with the bread dough. I think it does, the bread flour, I think it does make a difference. Okay. And then we'll take our knife and make diagonals, or try to. Just like that. I want it deeper because as it rises in the oven, I don't want the design to be completely lost. But I have a feeling with this one, it's so much lighter than the other one, it just may not work. Okay. Now we're going to go the other way, if I can do that. So if I went that way, see, I am smart at a lot of things, but direction and measurement is not my thing. We're going to get the egg all on here and try not to deflate the dough while we're doing it. And then get these black sesame seeds right in the middle and try not to get a bunch on the edges. Once the oven has preheated to 450 degrees, I'm going to bake it for about 8 minutes. Then I'm going to turn the oven down to 375, and it's going to bake for another 5 minutes or so, just until it's golden brown and it sounds hollow. You know the ropes with the bread. So I'm going to get that started, and then I'll be back. Well, y'all, I really wish we had smell-o-vision in here, because this smells amazing. It's a nice golden brown. This one is the one with the all-purpose flour. So I'm gonna lift this off of here and put it on the rack. This one is the one with the bread flour. Actually, the one with the all-purpose flour browned a little bit better than this one, and I don't know if it was because it was on a baking sheet and this was in a pan or not, but either way, they smell delicious. And I want you to notice that this is not a floppy bread. It's really crispy. The crust is really on the crispy side, and it holds its shape really well. In fact, this one, doing it in the cast iron pan, it really did hold a nice round shape. Whew, these are hot. So the bottom of this one is a nice golden brown. It's got that nice hollow sound to it. The crust is on the crispy side. This one rose a little bit thicker, and that could have been the pan. It's also a nice golden brown on the bottom, but it feels about the same. So I would say, as far as whether you bake it in a cast iron pan or whether you bake it on a heavy duty cookie sheet, that's not going to matter. It's going to be your preference. For serving, I think it'd be really pretty in the cast iron pan. But I'm going to let these cool down a little bit, and then we're going to cut into them and see what the differences are. Okay, y'all, I've let them cool for just a minute, and so I can actually touch them. And I wanted to cut into the original one, which was with the all-purpose flour first. You can see how light and fluffy the crumb is. It's soft, the crust is a little on the crispy side, and the inside is soft. This is a great flatbread for soups or with hummus or dips. with stews, just anything. And you can see it's really quick and easy, as I said, as long as you're home for the 2 hours that it takes for the rising and everything. It's a simple, simple bread. So let's set this one aside. I still want my cutting board. And let's cut into this one and see how it's different. Now, the outside crust is not quite, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. The outside crust is not quite as crispy as the other one. And the inside is maybe a little bit lighter and fluffier. It's got a little more air, a few more air holes in it. Let's compare the two. Do you see that difference? It's very minimal, very minimal. So I would say that if you only have, if you've only got all-purpose flour, don't worry about it. Just use that. It should be fine. But the bread flour does work really well. And you get those nice air pockets in there. Very soft. Oh, smells so good in here. Y'all, serve this bread in wedges next to a stew or some soup, and let me tell you, everybody's going to go nuts over it. It doesn't need butter, doesn't need anything on it. It's just so good. The texture is similar to a focaccia, but it's a little lighter and chewier, especially this one that was done with the bread flour. But it's simple, it's easy, it's relatively quick. It freezes well. There's no reason not to make. Right. Remember that the recipe is down below. You may need to scroll a little bit to find it. And there's a link to the blog with the printable recipe, nutrition information, more tips, everything that you could possibly need. It's absolutely delicious. I hope you try it. So that's it for me this week. And I hope that you'll subscribe, give me a thumbs up, a nice comment. Check out some of the other videos. There's other bread videos on here if you're more into like an old-fashioned sandwich bread. I've got the Amish white bread. I've got the English muffin bread that you're gonna love. There's a no-knead sandwich bread. Trust me, there's a bunch of them on here. They all work. They're all great, and they're definitely worth giving them a try. Okay. All right. I'll see y'all next week. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a nice comment, and I'll talk to y'all later. Okay. Love y'all. Bye bye.